So back to trusty riding horse. So feeling the dantian, just a center of contraction, drawing in, pulling. And you just start just moving from leg to leg with the figure of 8. Heel, outside edge, toes. And as you go through the toes, you can actually lift the heel a little bit. So just feeling the whole foot, never the complete foot active at one time. You're always passing through the foot. It can be at different directions, different passages through the foot, but you're never completely on the whole foot. And then just get the arms involved. So we just want that intending mind. And so I'm seeing this figure of 8 with my mind, and my arms are being dragged along by that. And just trying to make the figure of 8 as big as possible. So when I see people doing Tai Chi, the thing that always strikes me is their circles aren't big enough. So if they're really intending with their mind, then their circles would just be enormous, because their circles would be much bigger than their arms could possibly make. So it's always striving. The body is always striving to follow this eternally optimistic mind. So this is the wings. So you imagine you've got these big angel's wings that are bigger than your arms, and they're sort of wrapping around you, really unfurling. And so just feel where the wing inserts on your shoulder blade. And then just imagine the muscles that would move it around inside you, and try and get those. Something happens in the dantian to send your wing out and bring it round. The same as with the spines of the hedgehog. The belly contracts and the spines stick outward to protect it. So one. Ooh. Okay, now let's just bring it back to riding horse. Now you should feel really round and enveloped and very much in the heels. So just feel the equilibrium between the falling backwards that you require to get you into the heels properly, and the reaching forwards with your arms. So the worst thing really is that the equilibrium sets. So it loses its dynamic quality, its movement. And normally that will happen if you start to think to yourself. And so so we just try, maintaining the equilibrium is just a way of just keeping the mind really vigilantly present so it can't talk to itself. Talking to yourself is the enemy. The chief of wickednesses is the wandering of the thoughts. Because every other wickedness comes from that, yeah? So sin, Satan, is the wandering mind. And then just coming onto the toes, so just rocking off the heels. And now just feel it, ooh, it just fills up with this sparkly energy. So your eyes expand. You become internally excited. Feels a little bit dangerous because you could easily fall. So all the time, just keeping this heavy sacrum, pulling through it to give you some semblance of stability. And then just rocking back onto the heels and just feeling all of that fizzy energy just draining down into the ground, and you just retrieve your root and your stability and your depression. So when I say depression, I don't necessarily mean it in a bad way. You have to be a bit depressed. You have to be just stable and sober and pressed. So we're always having to press ourselves down, press our rampant ego down, bring ourselves under some disciplined control. Otherwise, we're just obnoxious creatures. And then just coming forwards onto the front of the foot again and just lifting the heel and just feeling it. Suddenly you become really spiky and just feel this having to maintain its tone, because when you lift the heels, the tail will tend to stick backwards. So I need this really tight, my Dan Chen. And it's like you become like a dragon, you feel yourself becoming a creature. And then just rocking back onto the heels. Ooh. So this is a relief. It's also long energy. So it's like 1 second in toe, spirit mode would be like the equivalent of like, an hour in heel mode. So just feeling the min meng pressing backwards. I just have to really try and get rid of that curve in the lower back, because that is the curve that feeds my ego, that feeds my mind, my wrong mind, my thinking mind, my conscious mind. Okay, now just one more rocking forward, so coming off the heels, and hooray. Pull the belly in to keep the back flat. The tail can stick out a little bit, but just not too much. You want it under control. So the mind dare not wander, otherwise you'll fall. And then just back into the heels and just hooking under the ground, so that you've got this circuit. You're containing yourself in this circuit. So let's just try just a little bit. So imagine it going down the back of the legs and into the heels, and then under the ground and up. Yeah. So just the classical Qigong circuit. So it's not the macrocosmic orbit that goes the other way, but that's more like inside. This is more sort of outside your body. This is more like the energy in your aura, the energy that Dr. Chi was interested in. Because Dr. Chi was doing endless Qigong, but it wasn't really Qigong. It wasn't anything to do with his own internal energy. He just wanted to get his sensitivity to be able to extend out of his body and into his external energy. So to give him some feeling, so so he would know what the other person was up to before they actually touched him. Yeah. Dr. Chi hated Qigong. He phoned John up once and says, "I've found a Qigong that doesn't involve Qi." He was really excited. To him, Qi was just like this selfish, it's all you. Yeah. This is why it's so popular now, I think. People get a buzz, they get a thrill. It's a bit like having a wank. So up and again, you've just got to get into it. You've got to start getting into intending mind. So you see this movement. Oh, I'm lifting this bloody great wad of energy and smashing it down through my head. And so a very physical use of the mind. So, if you had to do a task that was really, really difficult, like lift something that was really difficult, the way you just sort of, you compose yourself and then you bend down, then you scream to get this thing up. That's the mind. That's intending mind. So it's not this sort of composed, cool mind. It's the opposite of that. It's really passionate and hot. Okay. And now let's just bring it back to riding horse. So this sense that you've become so sort of quiet, still, and drawn in with your mind, but your energy is really expanding outwards, isometrically, so in all directions at the same time. So you're really being surrounded by these curves, these circles. So you're contained in like an egg or a ball. And now let's just, feeling one side drawing in, and that just allows the other side to just open up. Yeah, so what we have to be aware of is that we're so fucked up, we get everything so wrong, that when we give something, it's generally not really appropriate, yeah? Because we give with the mind. So what we want to do is actually take with the mind and just give with the spirit. So what comes out of me here, I've got no consciousness of. Something is coming out. I'm locking my eyes onto the fist or onto that side of my body. And then what I give comes out of like my blind side, or the side of me where I only have peripheral vision. And it's something that you sort of, something in you wakes up to it, but not in a conscious way. It's more like a feeling. So for me, there's like 4 levels of mind. So what I call asleep, which is when you're asleep. And that has its own levels as well, of course, because you've got dreaming within that and other things. So there's asleep, and then there's awake. So when because I'm half the week in Tel Aviv and half the week up north. So often when I wake up, I can't remember where the fuck I am. So there's that moment of, where am I? Am I in Tel Aviv? Yeah. And so that's like what I call awake. So You're no longer asleep, obviously, but you haven't yet really become aware. Yeah. And then the awareness creeps in. Suddenly there's like a familiarity to the world that you've woken up into. Yeah. And then the next stage is what we call consciousness. So that's really marked by a feeling of being able to name the parts. You can now bring language in and name the things that you see. And the mind starts becoming involved in manipulating that world, if only at a fantasy level. So in spiritual work and also in the martial arts, what they strive for is to get out of that conscious realm, because it just really slows you down and makes you stupid. Yeah. They've done so many experiments, psychologists, to show that, children and adults, they learn much better when they're not really conscious. They're not thinking consciously about what they're doing. They're just copying or just doing it. And when they become conscious of it, it messes them up. Because all consciousness is basically self-consciousness, yeah? If it wasn't, it would be what we call awareness. So we're just trying to get out of that conscious, language-dominated mind and get into awareness, get into wakefulness. And in meditation, especially, they talk about getting into that zone between asleep and awake. That's what Castaneda called dreaming. And he used to say that's what you really need your sexual energy for. He says you can either use your sexual energy to have sex, or you can use it to dream, to meditate. And he was always adamant you can't do both. You have to make the choice. It's because sex, for a man anyway, depletes the spirit, and you need the spirit to intend. And it's that intending mind that will roam through all those domains, the sleep, the wakefulness, the awareness, the consciousness. And now just letting it become knocking the gate of life. And again, just trying to get into the intention. So the intention it's not really the mind leading. It is the mind leading, but the mind that we're familiar with, that we're used to using, is completely the wrong mind. So it's more like using your spirit to become a creature that is really good at this exercise. Yeah. And just letting that creature loose and just letting it do it. Yeah. So, the Chinese with their animal forms, they don't just copy a monkey, they become a monkey. Yeah. So they take on board the spirit of the animal. And that's the intending mind, really. Or that's the sort of spirit that produces the intending mind. Just sink. Imagine your arms, imagine you're an ape and your hands are dragging along the ground. Just back into riding horse. And now it should just be easier just to draw this in and almost hunch over your Dan Chen. Ooh. Okay, now let's just try a little bit of backwards and forwards, but just from bow and arrow, from a riding horse to the corner, and then just turning it. So this front foot really sort of pointed in a little bit. And then just going backwards and forwards, but again, with this figure of 8, with this real feeling. So this is more for the wings, but the wings that for what John called the skirt, or the wings of the legs. So like 2 obviously smaller wings that come out of either side of your sacrum, out of the sacroiliacs really. So as I'm going around this foot, this wing is sort of furling around and its tip will come back into my Dan Chen or my navel, and then here. And again, just feeling the mind that makes it happen. So I have to really feel these circles. It's like opening your mouth really wide to take a big bite. So, so what we're aiming for is to round the knees out as you come round the foot. But we want that to happen not because I push the knees physically, but because my mind is really expanded as I go round the foot to create the loop of the figure of 8. So here's something in my mind, whoa, get really big. And then here, and then the knee will want to go out. The storm here. And when you get storms in Israel, they're real storms. Whoa. Okay, now let's try the other foot forwards. And again, just sort of riding horse to the corner that I then just turn into. So that front foot, I want it to feel not so much like a foot that's pointing forwards when I'm just sort of pumping into the flat of the foot or into the heel, but a foot that's angled in. So when I come forwards, I really press into that outside edge. So it almost cuts under the ground like this, yeah? So I'm really, I'm pressing into the outside edge of each foot. And that will just stimulate the ground differently. So here, really open. And then here, really open. And now your hands are just really picking the wing up and just bringing it around and back into the Dan Chen, and then this way. And just trying to keep the turning. Yeah, so even though it's ostensibly just moving backwards and forwards, I want to try and feel the turn more than that. So as I'm coming forwards from here, this foot is pushing me back rather than, it doesn't really want to let me just flop into it, because then the energy will just grind to a halt. So it's trying to push me here, and that's turning me to pick up this wing here. So just feeling the two legs really participating to produce this strong turn, especially here, because this is the difficult part. It doesn't really want to go that far. Barack. Barack, as in Barack Obama, means lightning in Hebrew. I'm sure he knows that. It's also a man's name, of course. Although I've only known one Barack since I've been in Israel. Okay, so let's bring it back. You just want the work to sort of, you're basically giving your body and yourself an ultimatum. It's either make or break. I'm either going to get it right or this body is fucked. Yeah. That's the only time the spirit comes up and you actually learn anything, is when it's at that point of real, it could go either way. Yeah. And if it failed, it would be really catastrophic. Yeah. Whenever there's a storm, there's a power failure. So luckily I have the laptop, which has a battery. Okay. And now just stepping, but again, just with a figure of 8. So round this foot and then round this foot. And just being delicate. So just putting the toes down first, especially when you step forwards. So I put the toes down and then I draw myself into the foot. So I'm pulling. And it's the mind, it's that mind that's going around the figure of 8 that pulls, yeah? So as my mind comes around this figure of 8, the leg is actually pulling me in. And then as my mind goes around this figure of 8, it's also the pull. Yeah, so when you intend, your mind expands. It's like, really, something happens. Something has to really intensify to make like basically an explosion inside your head. Way. So this is what, why pulling with the leg is so important, because basically it's just the mind, it's the intending mind that becomes the pull. When you're pushing from the leg, it's got nothing to do with the mind. It's just you being an oaf. Ooh. Yeah, so it's the wings again. So you can think of wings coming out of your shoulder blades or the wings of the legs. There's also wings here, come out of the occiput, either side. And that John used to call this like the cowl, like the monk's hood. Way. Okay, just a few more minutes, then I've got to shoot. So, okay, so let's try the other leg. So just putting the foot down, like really dainty, and then it's the mind, it's the intent, and my mind goes way in order to get some movement of the energy in that direction, and then that takes my body with it. So I'm sort of leading my body with this intensifying mind. Just been working with my 84-year-old. We were doing this and she was just doing it so well. The Israelis are just so clever. You tell them to do something, you tell the average English person to do something and they just get anxious. Oh, I'm not going to be able to get it right. I'm going to get it wrong. Whereas Israelis, it doesn't occur to them that they may possibly get it wrong. They're so arrogant. So they just get it right. And then they start thinking about it and then they get it wrong. So it's weird. Israelis are weird. Way. Okay. And just back to riding horse. And again, just almost bending double in an effort just to get the spine just a simple C-shaped curve. And just feel it when you're tired and your legs are hurting. What they're trying to do all the time is push up and squeeze this in. So basically, we're always having to tell ourselves, sink and let the sacrum expand across. Yeah, so we get the tail in, not by clenching the muscles here, but by simply expanding the sacrum. If you expand the sacrum, then it will just do this, just naturally curve under. So it's very much a natural consequence of opening up. Let's just try coming onto the toes again. So just feel how it tends to bring the elbows in and the fingers spike out. And you just grow all these hedgehog spines on your back. The belly is just trying to withdraw all the time. Just you know, people like Americans, they have these pet hedgehogs now, don't they? They're really cute. You know, their cute little snout. So you grow a snout. Try and grow a snout. Got this. The spines start here. You've got like this fringe of spines, and then they cover your whole back. Sonic the Hedgehog. And then just rocking back onto the heels. Now all those spines just draw back in, your intensity flattens, and your energy just starts swelling out, your aura energy. You just become smooth, but still quiet, but a very different quiet, an inactive quiet, whereas this was very much an active quiet. So basically, central equilibrium is just a balance of those two, really. You know, part of your foot is rooting, part of your foot is stimulating the energy, the spirits arise, the energies arise. And you're just juggling them. You're piggy in the middle. So let's just bring it up. Again, just, it's almost like you'd like, you know, from here, you'd like it to just simply be something in the belly really contracts, and that brings you up into a tension posture. So again, we'd like everything that we do to come from an action here or an action here, but mainly here. Because this is the yielding mind, this is the attacking mind. And we're, you know, as Dr. Chi used to say, 90% yielding and 10% attack. And as John said, it's more like 99 and 1. So we give the mind that intends the movement priority over the movement itself. And that's really Tai Chi. So without that intending mind, it's not Tai Chi, it's just going through the motions. The Tai Chi should wake you up and turn you into a monster. But it's always a monster contained within an egg. Okay, so let's leave it.